Once you're in it, you're in it, and you've got to go all the way to the end.
Lando into the final corner, his first win of the championship. Lando across the line to win in China.
Because you commit yourself to such a level where there is no compromise. You give everything you have.
The strategy paid off. He had one of the best hits I've ever seen on the medium tires. Nick Bell wins the Monaco Grand Prix.
Deep in towards the final chicane. Rudy's trying to go for it on the inside. There's still both wheels of order. Banging wheels. Old School's gone well.
Oh my word!
And you need more than anything a very clear mind to understand exactly when is the moment to be aggressive, when is the moment to be calculated.
He spun towards Brendan's
Oh, wing image! Oh, Brendan's out!
He's out of race! Oh my god, he's out of race!
When you are under a lot of pressure, in a critical moment, in a championship or in a particular race, it's the one that can put together the combination between aggressivity and calculating things that will get the best result.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the League of Europe. We are here for round number 3 around the Portimao circuit, the Algarve International Circuit around Portugal. My name is Jacob, of course, taking you guys through this as always, and joined alongside me once again, as always as well. It is what probably I would say the D2 legend. It is Mr. Dan, aka Daka. Dan, how are you doing this evening, my friend?
Yeah, D2 legend, 100% win rate at D2 from 2 races. Yes, welcome everyone. Round 3 of the championship here at Portimao. Of course, still a relatively new track in the context of the F1 game, but unlike last season, they've had a good amount of time to get used to it, so we should see a very high level race tonight. 19 on the grid for tonight. We are unfortunately missing Zaunima, wasn't quite able to make it for tonight, but we're going to see how things are going to unfold nonetheless. So it is round 3 of the championship, and of course the first 2 rounds both won by the same man, Rudy, in 1973, and it's going to be interesting to see whether he can retain that. Going forward now into qualifying, overcast conditions. We have seen rain in every single one of the divisions earlier, the previous time slots, D1, 3 and 4. Nothing yet in qualifying we will see though, but yeah, Jack, looking forward to qualifying as I mentioned. Same man, Rudy, on top first 2 races. The question is, can he make it a 3-peat? Can he make it 3 in a row? We'll see what happens tonight, but it should be an exciting watch once again.
Sorry, I did not realise that my microphone was on mute. Yes, no, you are correct. It's going to be quite an interesting one for qualifying. Yeah, I mean, I've been told by Larkin it's an all-dry session, and so, I mean, there won't be any rain in this one, so hopefully we should be having quite an exciting race, especially if it is all dry. But, yeah, there is someone in Division 2 that is making their debut. That is LOI Sully. He was in the Division 3 preseason race in USA, and yeah, he is making his debut now in place of JD Nolan for tonight, or Ariel Nolan. So, yeah, I'm quite intrigued to see how he's going to do against this Division 2 grid. He was very quick in preseason for Division 3, so yeah, I expect him to probably do a pretty decent job in Division 2. But again, it's just if this track is probably one that suits him. Obviously, if not, then you know, there probably will be other races and opportunities for him to do this as well. But yeah, I mean, around here, it's quite a complex track. Like you were saying as well, Dan, it's still a relatively new track in comparison to anything, like all the other tracks that are on the calendar.
Yes, certainly, of course, all but Imola, and I get into a certain extent Saudi Arabia as well. Those tracks, fairly new. We've already seen Imola earlier on in the season, so these guys probably still haven't completely optimised this track yet, but of course, they should be as close as they can. Of course, these guys all very high level on the game now. So we are just now getting the opening laps through in qualifying. TDG slashes first on the track, but he runs wide in through turn 4, snaps it, and that is a lap pretty much done. He backs off midway down the lap. Very easy to make a mistake. There's quite a few critical traction zones on this track where you can get very, very out of shape. Turn 4 being a main one, turn 8 as well. You know, there's one theme of this track is that control that you need to have in applying that throttle pedal all the way through, and of course that's probably why a lot of people like to call this a bit of a pad track, and I guess to a certain extent it is a bit of a pad track. So we'll see some drivers doing well tonight, including possibly the man I'm on board with right now, QRT Diamond, formerly known as TDB, formerly known before that as Super Gamer. This man won the race last season and has been putting up very, very quick times in the build-up, so you can expect good things from him again tonight, and looking like a fairly clean lap to get things opened up now as he heads around the final flat-out corner on the run up to the line. It's a very, very long straight. Slash does set a lap time, but it's not particularly representative. Diamond to the line, a 16.2 is the opening. Maybe you could see Post squeezing into the 15s, but that's a very strong banker lap from Mr. QRT time, and he goes onto the provisional pole, and we'll see if anyone else can try and stand up to that time. But the defending race winner, if you like, from last season, already off to a strong start in this qualifying session. That's going to be a tough reference on the banker laps for the others.
Certainly will. Emily Prime, again, a new driver in this division as well. I think I've not sort of seen him in Division 2 before, so yeah, I think he's also making his debut for tonight. Puts it in V3 so far on the mediums for 16.948 as Rudy. Well, it looks as if it's going to be happening again. Straight already on par with a 16.186. Timon's teammate, Larkin, going into P3 with 16.410. Brendan in 6th with 16.833 is Mr. BT. Ooh. Again, another one that I think only made his debut last week in France, but puts it on the pole so far with 16.066. I'm expecting the pole times to be a little bit lower than that 16.0. Of course, these are only just the banker laps, so I'm expecting towards the end of the session, I think we could be seeing probably, I'd say, a 15.7 as a pole position for this division, and it's going to be very, very close, because I think Division 1's Division 1 pole position time would be sort of around 15.3, but I think you said that they had rain or something like that, so yeah, Division 2's going to be quite an interesting one, I've got to admit, but yeah, I'm expecting 15.7 for a round pole. A few of the guys have invalidated on their lap and gone back into the pits, and a few other guys are going for a second lap. A few of the roll guys come into this, and Funky Chicken are the two that are going for another lap as well, Dan.
Yeah, certainly. So you're already seeing some of the issues with track limits. One thing I'll say with this track, the track limits very, very strict around here. I've actually seen people getting laps invalidated when they're really still within that white line. So you do have to try it very carefully when it comes to the outer regions of the circuit out there. But you can see the likes of Carmensless diving to the pit lane very early on. So yeah, certainly some drivers struggling to get the laps in, but Mr. BT, CPI Mr. BT, on that provisional pole, we saw very quickly his one lap pace throughout last week, and he was in that fight for the podium throughout the race in France last time out as well, so he can certainly be one to watch later on. IRT Boomtia comes over the line as P11 116.7, so that is for the most part the first runs in the book. Still a lot of drivers not to set competitive times at the moment, so yeah, Mr. BT on that provisional pole, and just like what we saw in France, this man already on just a second race proving to be one of the top one lap drivers in Division 2 at the moment.
Well, I think we're going to see like a repetition of this. Like, we'll see like a few guys that are like very quick over one lap, and then we're going to see a lot of guys that are more or less a lot better in the races. Obviously, the main point of mine, a lot better in races are Carmensless and Zaldemar. But obviously, guys, when you think of one lap pace, you think of guys like Timon, you think of Mr. BT, you think of Calvin, Funky Chicken up there to an extent as well. There's a lot of people that are very quick across one lap that tend to sort of drop down a bit towards like coming into the race. So we might see a bit of that tonight. However, obviously Portimao, not particularly the easiest place to overtake. Of course, there are two DRS zones in this, but again, just the only place really is down that back straight, or the start-finish straight, shall I say. Leading up in towards turn 1, you can't even really go too wide into turn 1. It's more the case if they try and go for it down the inside, you might have to back out if you're on the outside. Try and hang it around there. It probably won't work out for you, but yeah, I think down towards turn 1, and even in the first lap when we do go on the race, I think there's going to be a bit of carnage that's going to ensue down in there, Dan.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, pretty much a one-line corner, and you're barreling towards that bunched up in the pack, so those guys are going to have to take care. You mentioned one-lap specialists, and I'm certainly watching one that's just started a lap, the McLaren of Mr. CRL Nathan JB, pole sitter in the opening round of the season. We're going to do a little lap on board with him as he just swings it through turn 4, getting that difficult traction zone. He runs a little bit wide of the apex where he wanted to be, but he does recover it. Now getting onto the brakes and to the hairpin of turn 5, just trying to get it all nicely hooked up and turned in. Try and keep it within the track limits as best you can on the exit, but of course you've got to be using all the track you can. Now flick it, turn 7 nearly flat out, on the brakes into a very difficult uphill traction zone. You've got to keep it nice and smooth, heading through the exit then you sweep through turn 9, and then you open up turn 10 and 11, take a wide entry line, get into that apex, and early on the throttle. It's all about carrying the momentum then. King of 12, and then towards the hairpin of turn 13, getting on to those brakes, hooking in, get that apex, and you can choose to use the curb on the outside. Nathan JB opting for a more cautious line, heading, get a little bit of understeer, heading through 14, now to the exit, then he powers away. So CRL Nathan JB will look to try and get a lap on the board. Of course, we saw the mistake in the first sector. That will probably cost him a bit of time, but it's not a bad lap. A 16.4 is his mark so far. So that is Nathan JB up to P6. Now we look to see the rest of the runs, because everyone now pretty much is on those second laps, beginning to barrel down the lap. So let's see what everyone can do. Mr. BT, that provisional pole, we'll see if it's usurped as we get into the second phase of qualifying here, Jack.
Yeah, we certainly will. Creeko, there you go. He was just saying that he's the one that's now made the top of the timesheet. He's done a 16.054, 12 thousandths of a second up ahead of Mr. BT. So, yeah, he's going to definitely one we need to try and keep our eye on. Another one that I would definitely say is more of a one-lap specialist, but I suppose across the season, him and his teammate Emily Scream, who's just put it on a P5, they've had their races where they're just as good in qualifying as in the races. Another MLE driver, Prime, the first one into the 15s, a 15.990 for the MLE driver, as I was just riding on board with Cox. He's just getting out of the way of, I believe that is Tin Can, as Forza Brendan doing the exact same time as Mr. BT.
Wait for it.
Into P3, and then saying that, like you were saying, Mr. BT chugs it now on pole, 15.847. A few other guys making their way up towards the line as well. Slash invalidated on his lap, puts it was still P5 for 16.123. Rudy invalidated on his lap as well, and I think it must have been at the exit of the final corner, because he's invalidated for this lap as well. The two Alfa Romeos, I was about to say Timon was on a lap, but he's slowed down significantly. Larkin is on a lap, and I get the feeling Timon might actually be giving Larkin a bit of DRS here. He's 900ths up on his time, and went purple in sector 2, so let's keep an eye out on that one. Are we going to be seeing a bit of slipstream and a bit of teamwork going on between these two Alfa Romeos? I'm going to ride on board with Larkin. You can see Timon is there just in front of him. I don't think he's got enough speed and momentum to do it though. However, he's giving in that toe. Timon does move out of the way onto the left hand side just to get out of Larkin's way. Don't know if that was enough for a slipstream, but up towards the line comes Larkin. It's a 16.248, and it still remains him in P9. That only overtakes his teammate, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't think the slipstream was as well executed as they wanted it to be. Larkin probably didn't get as much of an effect as he wanted. June, by the way, Aston Martin to P2, another renowned qualifying driver, puts himself right up into the mix, so he is just 1/10 of a second off of that provisional pole at the moment. Mr. BT is setting the pace very emphatically so far in qualifying, but still a lot more, I think, is to come from a lot of the drivers in this field. So let's see what these guys can do. Real Coxey I just went on board with, but he's invalidated on that lap. XL Gary is a few seconds behind him, heading through turn 14 now. Of course, it's all about early on the throttle here, but keep it within the track limits. Now it's all flat out to the line. This long run towards turn 1 is going to cause some issues in the race, but of course they don't have to worry about that. It's just a run to the line, and Gary puts it only P12, 16.4, of course, for a man that was in the hunt for pole position in France. Not exactly what he would have been looking for at this stage. I think we saw Eloise Sully. He's setting a non-representative time. Will go again. Behind is the other Alfa Romeo. Diamond goes into third position. Much better from the Portugal specialist. Goes third, 1:59, just 2 thousandths of a second shy of Joome's P2 time. So the times are beginning to come down in this early phase. But Mr. BT, you have to say, has really set the pace with 6 minutes to go. Fastest on the first runs, fastest on the second runs, so far it looks as though that Alpine man just has a little edge over the rest of the field, and it's up to the others now to try and find that time to knock him off that top spot.
Yeah, no, certainly will be. Mr. BT doing a very good job in qualifying very early on. Doom, of course, as well, puts in his first valid lap, and it's a 15.974 into P2, and Timon as well, same thing. Into P3, 15.976. So those top three very, very close, and even Prime as well, 15.990, only 14 thousandths of a second shy of Timon in third. So any small margin any of these drivers can do in their final runs is going to be where is where they're going to sort of push themselves up in that order. LOI Sully just making his way into the pits. He did invalidate on his lap. I think he was gearing up to go for one, and then just unfortunately for him invalidated. Gary, of course, also just going to be making his way into the pits, and a few guys now out on their out laps. And in fact, Nathan JB now on his second lap. He left it too late though? That's the thing. It still says there's yellows in sector 3 for just slowing cars. But I believe there's only about 5 or even 4.5 minutes left to go of the session. I think Nathan might have cut this a bit too fine. This might be Nathan's final lap unless he comes in potentially at the end of this lap. But we're right on board with him anyway, because he's sitting down in 11th at the moment. There's 16.440 on that poor man's pole position, as I like to call it. Especially considering that it's all dry. Guys outside the top 10 will be, have their free choice of tyre. And I think the strategies around here usually is just a soft medium or medium soft. So the medium soft, of course, being significantly better than the soft to medium tyres. So I think if the guys starting outside the top 10, we may need to keep an eye out on them, especially the one that picks it in P11. We need to just, keep our eye out on them and see where how they're going to do towards the end of the race. It could be another sort of France situation as like it was last week. We never know. But Nathan now making his way around what I'd probably say is the final corner, because the final corner is just completely flat out. Very nice and early out on the power comes Nathan, and now coming up towards the line, keeping it as far right as he possibly can. Shifts it up into 8th and actually comes into the pits. So yeah, he is making his way into the pits. Not going to be putting that lap on the board. I mean, Slash is out on his final run now and coming through sector 2. Let's see what his time is going to be. Is he up on his time? Let's have a look. Slash, he's 11 thousandths of a second down on his time, but he went purple in sector 2. So we could be seeing an improvement from the Williams driver. Let's keep our eye out on him as he's making his way now, of course, around the long sweeping right-hander, the second to last corner, and coming up towards now the final corner. Of course, the RS is going to be enabled a little bit up at the hill, and of course you might see that the RS start to deplete. There you go, up towards the line comes Slash, and it's into P2. 15.927, so ended up improving a 0.2 of a second on that lap in that final sector. Is pretty impressive, Dan.
Yeah, that last sector must have been immense, or maybe he just made a mistake on his first lap. Nevertheless, T2G Slash onto that provisional front row, but I think that's going to be it for him in this session, so it's up to the others to try and push him down. Slash will be hoping, of course, he can remain on that front row of the grid. It is a long run into turn 1 though, so anything can happen. Now, inside the last 3 minutes and into the critical phase in qualifying, our LOI Sully is back out there on the circuit now. Of course, really the priority has to be getting a valid lap time in, but of course you want to push with all you have to get yourself as far up the grid as you can. We'll see what the first sector is looking like, and it's a 22 flat, which to be honest isn't particularly quick. He did look like he was taking it quite easy, maybe just trying to get that valid lap time in, but of course in such a competitive field you need to put in essentially a banger of a lap to make sure that you're getting substantially far up the grid. 5 drivers at the moment under that 76 second barrier at the moment, and into the 115s. Mr. BT pole position by just under 1/10 of a second from Slash, so we'll see how that is going to unfold. Sully 51.5, much more competitive middle sector, it must be said, so let's see what he can do now in this final phase of the lap. He's a little hesitant heading through at turn 13, quite aggressive into 14, on the throttle as early as you can through the exit now. That momentum is carried all the way down towards the finish line on the track, so you can see that again running out of that battery. DRS is open, but 16.6, I think it was quite a cautious lap from Sully. 16.6 at the moment, and yeah, he'll have been hoping for more, I imagine, but at least he's not on the back of the field. Anyway, now with coming towards the final phase in the session, we're going to see now the final runs coming in. Let's see how this is going to unfold then towards the end of the session. Mr. BT on that pole position. The question is though, is he going to hold on to it?
Well, let's keep our eye on that. A few guys are making their way around the final corners now. AJ Wuhan, no, he's actually still on a lap at the moment, just coming up towards the end of Sector 2. Ariel Coxey, I believe, is making his way up towards the line. He's 2 tenths up on his time. Is it going to be into the top 10? Yes, it is, by 5 thousandths of a second up ahead of Larkin. Carmentelis just be starting his lap. Gary coming into the pits. So Gary is done in this qualifying session. P13 is the best of what he's going to get. Rudy is just known his lap as well, a 10.5 up through that first sector, but he's not using ERS at this point through turn number 8. So I don't know if that's a little bit tactical just to keep the ERS towards the end of the lap. June just starting his final lap now as well. He's going to run on board with Mr. BT. He's making his way up towards the line. Does improve on his time with a 15.796. As a few other guys making their way up towards the line. Funky Chicken into P12 is 16.277. The other Mercedes, Forza Brendan, did not improve on his time, and I think he actually must have invalidated on his first lap, because it looks as if this is going to be his lap to try and push this as hard as possible. Emily Creco into the pits, so the best he's going to be starting is in P number 6. A few other guys just making their way around that final corner. I'm trying to see who that might be. I think that's Carmentalist coming up towards the line. Only P16 for the Alpine driver, of course, putting himself very competitive earlier on in the season. Tin Can up into P8 with a 16.169. Bumpier into 16th. Now, Carmentalist, despite having that lap in 16th, he's now back down into 18th position. Very unfortunate for him. A few other guys just making their way around the final corner. Emily Scream being one of them. Up towards the line comes Scream. Is it going to be in contention with his teammate? It certainly is. A 16.001 into P number 6. So nice time for Scream in the end. And as I said, I think a few guys were there validated on their first laps. They're going to be now coming around to finish their final laps. Timon makes his way into the pits. Well on board with Doom as he's invalidated on his final run. He did improve on his time, but it wouldn't have put him up ahead of Slash. It would have kept him exactly where he is in P3. But it looks as if that is it might actually be our qualifying session. I think Forza Brendan's the only one that we've got to wait for, and he's just made his way into the pits. So I think that is it for qualifying, Dan. Mr. BT chucking on pole by over a 1/10 of a second. As weird as this is going to sound, I think that's the biggest margin we've had so far in qualifying for the top 2.
Yeah, may well be. So very commanding. There were a lot of mistakes on the last runs I saw from some of the other top contenders in the session, so they weren't able to really make the impact. Mr. BT's second run was already good enough, but in the end, he decided to stamp his authority on the session, and a 1:15.7 is the time that he sets there. 1.25 tenths clear. That may well be the biggest margin, even though, of course, it's not a particularly big gap. He is pole, and Slash holds onto the front row in the end. P2 on the grid from Jim, who invalidated his last run, but still a very strong third. Timon in fourth. Emily Prime and Emily Scream, all Emily on the third row of the grid from Creco. Larkin, late improvement, puts him into 8th. Then the top 10 is rounded out by Forza Brendan and Tin Can Rudy, the double race winner, down in 11th, but has that poor man's pole position to his advantage. Coxey P12, then it's Funky Chicken, AJ Wuhan, Nathan P15, then Bumpier, Gary, Carmentalist, Sully rounds out the grid for the Portuguese Grand Prix. So in the end, it is Mr. BT. Again, we saw his 1 lap pace. I think he was 3rd on the grid for France. First on the grid here in very commanding fashion. And the real interesting story, though, the man who has pretty much been top 2 in every single session we've done so far, qualifying or race, Rudy from P11. Strategy set up well, but in terms of track possession, he's got a lot of work to do if he wants to try and get himself back up there to try and get another race win. A lot of work to do, but if anyone can do it, he can.
It's this thing, though. You've got the safety car, and that's the only factor that I think is going to ruin him for being able to try and get within that top 3, or even trying to get in that top 2 once again. You know, I say the alt strategy is very, very good, but if there's a safety car around lap number 7, lap number 8, it just gives a free pit stop for the soft runners, and then the medium runners, I mean, they could go to the hards, but they're going to be extremely slow towards the latter stages of the race. They might have been better off just staying out and being able to just try and go for a set of the softs towards the end. Unfortunately, it's just going to completely compromise the strategy, but I wonder if that means that we may see a bit of a split in the bottom half of the grid. Let's have a quick look at the tyres and see who has gone on what. So yeah, Rudy, in fact, he has gone on a set of the softs, as well as AJ Wuhan. They're the only 2 outside of the top 10 have gone on a set of the softs. Everybody else has gone on a set of mediums. Coxey's the front runner in the medium tyres, so if he can make a few moves whilst everybody else is on the set of softs, Coxey has got a very good chance tonight. Again, though, he's just got to hope that there isn't any sort of incidents within the first 13 laps. Otherwise, I think that strategy ruined for the medium runners.
Yes, certainly. I mean, you need to be on that soft tyre, really, to be punishing. The good thing is, though, in the first stint, soft tyres generally aren't all that great. They can overheat, and the pace isn't that much of an advantage. Those guys can stick with the front runners fairly easily, I think, after the first couple laps. Of course, the advantage that someone like Mr. BT has, if we're talking about the front of the field, things can really bunch up if you're caught up in the fighting, because having to leave space for other cars and just generally racing through those first few corners slows you down a lot. Mr. BT will look to get a good start and try and escape, or someone like Slash is going to try and jump him off the line and be that one to pull away. But it's a good track to be in front, that's for sure. Of course, if you can't get away within those first 2 laps, DRS enabled, and then the tides begin to turn. But that start could be very, very influential as to how the race is going to unfold. They're coming to the grid now. Mr. BT on that pole position, Slash alongside him. That start so important because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very long run towards turn 1, and of course if you get a bad start you're going to be exposed all the way down there, so the start critical for those front runners. We'll see who's going to launch off the line well as the grid now begins to take shape. It is Mr. BT Slash the front row. Jim Timon will look to try and take advantage. Very intriguing start. That could get messy. Hopefully it doesn't, as now the grid comes to a halt on the starting line. I'll hand it back over to you, Jack, to one of 33 laps of racing at Portimao. Who's going to emerge victorious? The third round of the season about to get underway.
Certainly is, and obviously Rudy, our championship leader, he's won 2 of the last 3 races. Larkin is the one in second and Gary in third. Are we going to see a similar scenario for tonight? We have got the 5 red lights on for round number 3. Out they go very, very quickly, and away all the drivers go. And yes, Mr. BT getting that start that he really desperately needed. Slash also getting a pretty decent start, but Timon lined up alongside him, pushes him off of the track. Timon's still going to be keeping that inside of Slash in towards turn number 3. I think Timon has gotten that move done. He certainly has, although goes a little bit too deep. Slash now trying to go for a bit of the overcut on that, but has to back out of that one. Goes a little bit wide once again, coming out of turn number 4. And now him and Prime are both side by side now, trying to go in towards turn number 5. A little bit of contact between the pair of them. Slash, hopefully he did not just pick up any sort of wing damage going into the back of Timon, but a lot of changes going up and down the origin and screamers. There's been a massive crash. That is Brendan and Rudy that have gone around at turn number 5. So Brendan, the Irishman, I don't know what had happened to him, and Rudy dropped down the order significantly. Bumpier and Gary both going at it as well, coming through turn number 8, and Gary now dropped down behind Rudy and behind Bumpier. I think Gary must have been the one that got caught up with Brendan. The 2 Irishmen, it's always happening between these 2, seem to come together, and Gary is now down into P18. Very unfortunate for him and for Brendan. As obviously, I don't know what had happened at the beginning there, but Mr. BT had the perfect getaway. Timon, though, had a very nice start and managed to get himself already a second and a half up ahead of Slash, now trying to chase down that race lead.
Prime is already lining up Slash here. Slash looks to be struggling inside. It is Emily Prime, and he will go for that position 3 on the road. I think Slash will have no choice but to let it go on the outside line at turn 1. So Prime to P3, but already that gap opening towards the front 2. Jim is looking on the back, doesn't get through at the moment. Gary moving past Bumpier, trying to recover. Brendan, I just saw a Mercedes spearing off the side of the track, and Rooney was collected as well, critically. Now both of those guys to the pit lane, medium tyres going on, so they'll try and set up that strategy. AJ Wuhan further up the field to the inside of Emily Creeko at the hairpin, and now they run level on the exit and struggling for traction. It's the Ferrari man as they run up towards turn 7 and 8. Wheel-to-wheel contact on the entry. Ray Creeko runs him out wide. AJ Wuhan trying to hang it around the outside, get better traction on the exit. Nearly rounded the AlphaTauri, but he outpowers the Ferrari in the end and gets through to P8 on the road. So fierce battling between those 2 already, and 10 candles looking on the back of AJ Wuhan. So softs for the top 10, mediums to the bottom 10, and Coxey and the medium train is still with us at the moment. But really, because of all that happened near the front then, it is Mr. BT who's got a bit of a break. Timon has worked hard, but he hasn't quite got the DRS for lap 3. He needs a big lap to get himself back in, and Prime, having got past Slash at the beginning of the lap, now drops back. So as we head on to the third lap, Mr. BT flying at the front. Timon will try and get with him, but at the moment, with no DRS for those guys, Timon needs to get in, otherwise Mr. BT could have a very unchallenged run at the front there. He's controlling the race at the moment.
June having a little bit of a spin out of turn number 2. The Spaniard just drops it, didn't hit any wall or anything like that. Emily Scream and AJ Wuhan's just gone round at turn number 2. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if that was just a loss of traction or what, but I also saw Larkin and Scream both going side by side. Larkin down around the outside of the German. Scream just trying to sort of push Larkin towards the edge. A little bit of contact between the pair of them. Larkin's going to have the inside for turn number 7. Is he going to be able to hold on to this one up ahead of the German? They're still both side by side. A little bit of wheel bang in between the pair of them. I think Larkin just barging his way through and getting up into P5, so Larkin now up into 5th, but because of all that battle between the pair of them, he's now dropped out of DRS by almost 2 seconds from the 2 Williams drivers. So the 2 Williams drivers of Prime and Slash are now just able to get away from everybody else. Larkin's going to be under an immense amount of pressure, but yeah, Doom at a turn, I think it was coming through turn 2. I know there's like a little bump in between turn 1 and turn 2. I think the Spaniard must have hit that quite a wrong angle, and it's just completely sent him off. So unfortunately for Doom, he's now down into P10. Still got everything intact from the looks of things, but he's now got a bit more of a tall order. He's now behind his teammate on the set of the medium tyres. I think he really needs to just try and get a bit of a move along. There's a bit further upstream now. DRS wide open for the German. I think he's going to go for the move on towards Larkin and towards turn number 1. You can see a little bit of contact between the pair of them. Scream completely shoving Larkin out of the track. It was a little bit of a... he was down the inside, but it was a bit more of a dirtier move than that. So, yeah, I think Scream... a little bit too aggressive, but I suppose that's how it is at turn 1. That's how it is. There's not much more that you can do about it. Larkin, though, going to try and eye up that move down the inside of Scream in towards turn number 5. Scream's going to have the outside, going to have a much better traction coming out of there. Larkin, there's not much that he could particularly do about it. All that battling is now allowing Scream's teammate of Creco to try and eye up a move on the Alfa Romeo driver as well.
All this fighting, well, it's very exciting to watch. It's not doing either of them any good, because now look at that gap up ahead to Slash. 2.4 seconds already at this stage in the race. Very, very crucial. Still, there's a battle raging between the top 2. Timon is doing everything in his power to get within that DRS, and he is oh so close, heading up towards the detection point here. It's just coming into the last corner. We'll see what it is, but Timon gets a bit of understeer, and he will be set back. He's got slightly less battery to use, so Mr. BT has done all that he needs to do to keep the Alfa Romeo, the race winner last season, at arm's length at the moment. Just over 1 second between those guys, all stable apart from this fight for P5, as Larkin now trying to come back towards Scream. Then is Scream going to cover the inside lane here, I wonder? Larkin goes to the inside there with DRS, and is the fortune going to be repaid? In the end, Scream backs out of that one. Larkin gets through. Scream will sit back and look to try and find other opportunities, but those guys going back and forth, and the gap continues to grow. 3 seconds up ahead. Kariko up behind his teammate Scream won't go for the move just yet, but Coxey, you have to say as well, is in this and a very good position at the moment as the leading medium runner. Doom separating him from the rest of the medium train, so Coxey off to a very strong start here. I do remember him being pretty strong around here last season as well, sitting nicely there in P9, and you have to say with that medium strategy set up very well. If he can stay with this P5 fight, a lot of potential later on in the race for Coxey. I think there's more to come from the Aston Martin man.
Yeah, no, there certainly will be. As I said, like I said before, the alternate strategy around here is very powerful, especially towards the end of the race, because obviously at the start of the race they're all going to be on heavier fuel, and I suppose the front left on these tyres, they do tend to overheat quite significantly. So with Coxey, of course, being on these medium tyres, they're not going to exactly overheat as much as what the softs are, and you can already start to see, I think the soft tyres are starting to degrade a bit more in comparison to the mediums, because Coxey doing a very good job of keeping up with the rest of these soft runners. Of course, the RS is open, so he's going to be able to keep up with that, but at the same time, he just looks a lot more confident coming through heavier braking zones in comparison to all the other drivers that are on these set of soft tyres. I mean, even just coming through turn 1, you can see it. So much more confident on the brakes into turn 2. Again, all over the back of Tin Can coming through turn number 2 as well. So, turn 3, sorry, and turn 4. So, I think Coxey really is one we need to keep our eye out on towards the end of this race. A little bit further up, though, interestingly enough, Prime is now back within DRS to Timon, so I don't know whether Timon made a mistake or what, but or he's just completely pushed those tyres to the limit. To the point where he's now struggling on it. Prime is now back within DRS of the Alfa Romeo. And saying that, Mr. BT, he's starting to drop down a little bit as well. And I think Timon, we might see him get DRS. So the top 4 all coming together once again. I think there's going to be a couple DRS trains separating each other. Of course, really down to 17th, not involved in that battle from 5th all the way down to 16th with Gary at the back of that. But yeah, I think there's going to be a very interesting race come towards the middle, even towards the end, even when the first set of pit stops come about, which will probably be in about 4 to 5 laps time. I think we'll start to see the first set of pit stops. Who comes out on top of that though, we shall await and see.
I have to say that the race pace of Emily Prime looks very encouraging, although he is extremely low at battery. But to be fair, all these guys are. They've really pushed the envelope, and that's probably why that gap back to the rest of the field really has grown to such an extent. Then Larkin also very low. Scream pretty good on the battery, and so are the majority of the drivers in that train that have sort of just sat there and watched, waiting for the opportunities to present themselves. But Coxey's pace looks better and better, and he sits behind Tin Can, but not interested in going for the move just yet. So they all filter through nicely at the moment. No real moves heading on into that hairpin. Looks like they're all just biding their time. A lot of medium runners playing the long game in that sort of train, but drivers like AJ Wuhan will be looking to try and get on with it. But we're at that point now. The softs clearly just don't seem to have the overall grip. We've seen sliding even from the leaders, and now the likes of Coxey, Funky Chicken, those guys on the mediums, they're beginning to come into it. Jim, I think, will try and follow his teammate through, but I think Coxey now, if he's really serious about getting a great result here, I know it's tough in the DRS train, but can he maybe start setting up a move, maybe into the likes of that hairpin? He looks very quick. He's using different lines to set up moves. Coxey looks really encouraging, and of course as the laps tick on, the softs are only going to degrade further, and the mediums are only going to become more competitive.
Certainly will. Looking at the board though for second position, Timon I think is about to lose that out to Prime down the inside in towards turn number 1, both on pretty much 0% ERS, and Prime gets the move done on Timon up in towards turn number 1. So Prime now, very good job from him catching up to Timon, losing a little bit of time to Mr. BT once again as June picking up the 3-second time penalty. Him and AJ Wuhan I think were the first 2 to pick up time penalties, but yeah, Prime going a little bit defensive in towards turn number 5 just to make sure that Timon doesn't get that move done on him once again. And Mr. BT, a very good race pace so far from him, despite not being in any trains or anything like that. Just, he's just allowed to run his own race out in the front of the grid, and in doing so, of course, all of the battling that's going on behind him is just costing them all time to try and catch up to Mr. BT. However, I think we might start to see a little bit of a catch up coming through this last sector. It just seems to me that Mr. BT might be running a little bit lower wings than what the rest of the guys are from second down to 4th. Because it just seems to me that in this second sector and the beginning of the third sector, they really catch up to him. It's just in that first sector where there's, of course, 2 DRS straights is where Mr. BT sort of thrives on that and just make sure he stays up ahead of them. Of course, a little bit further down in the field, Tin Can still all over the back of Emily Creco in the Alpha Tauri, and you can really start to see that these softs are starting to struggle. Tin Can's just been building up his ERS, and he's now, we might even see him, because of how close he is, starting to use his ERS a bit more now. We might even see an attack come from the Haas driver. Of course, they're all in this DRS train, but it's very difficult to get any sort of moves done. But Creco starting to drop back off a little bit from this fight in P5. I was saying that Larkin makes a bit of a mistake coming through turn 1, and that's costing him a bit of time. That's now allowed Creco to close that back up entirely. There's a little bit of a tap from Tin Can on the back of Emily Creco, and I think even in towards turn 5 we could potentially be seeing a move. You can see he's using that DRS to his affection and does not get any sort of move done, so has to stay behind them for now. They are all riding it in this DRS train. I think the pit stops are where we're going to see moves done, and it's, as I said, it's whoever gets the undercut on these soft tyres might have a bit more of an advantage. The question is when they're going to come in, especially the guys from the 5th down into 8th, because they could also get a little bit more of a gap closing up to those guys from 1st down into 4th, and then it gives them that bit more of an advantage to, as I said, they could get away from the rest of the guys if there's only sort of one that tries to go for a bit of an audacious one. Probably the one that comes to mind for me would be June, just to try and get himself back up there a little bit more.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, he is out of position compared to where he wants to be. Of course, qualifying P3 on the grid. Just keeping an eye on this battle up front. As you mentioned, Prime dives to the pit lane, so he's going to go for that undercut and gets a penalty just going in. That is going to be so crushing for him because he was setting himself up, was catching Mr. BT, but in the end, that penalty is going to set him back. No, Ed Creco and Jim, as you mentioned as well, those guys also diving towards the pit lane. So that opens up a few gaps in the train, but at the moment it looks like they're all staying within DRS mediums for all, unsurprisingly. But Prime, you have to say, for a man that looked as though he was just moving into contention for even the race, when the Williams emerges, he'll try and make that undercut work as best he can, but regardless of whether he gets out in front or not, that 5-second penalty is going to hurt him to a massive extent in such a competitive fight amongst that top 4.
Yeah, no, it certainly will be, and now I think that's pretty much him over and done with for that fight in that top 4, unless of course he can somehow get that removed from, or even try and serve that, as it's been a bit of a spinner at the back. That is AJ Wuhan once again on those soft tyres. Unfortunately for him, now down into 13th position. You can really see those softs have completely gone off, and they're going to be overheated as well, so I think AJ Wuhan might be a bit of a struggle towards, well, he needs to try and come into the pits basically this lap, but you can't really push it too much, otherwise you're just going to be going spinning again. So yeah, AJ Wuhan, very unfortunate for him, down in 13th position now, and completely out of place. Mr. BT into the pits, and a lot more guys diving into the pits now. Scream, Larkin almost going into the back of Scream, had to take evasive action, so he broke way too late coming into the pits, and he picks himself up a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pits in well, because of that as well. Timon, interestingly enough, stayed out, as well as Slash. Obviously, I know Timon and Larkin are both teammates, but I'm very surprised that Timon wasn't the one that came in to sort of cover off Mr. BT and cover off Prime, because look, Prime is now side by side with Mr. BT coming through turn number 3, and you can really see that, well, Mr. BT was about 1.6 seconds up in front. Now he's got to be defending from early Prime in towards turn number 5. Prime surely not as far behind, does not send it down the inside in towards turn 5, but it depends who's going to get a better traction. It looks like Mr. BT is the one with the better traction. However, that's what I'm saying, the undercut is very powerful around here, and the only two still yet to pit on those soft tyres are Timon and Slash, who's fighting for the lead of the race. Surely Mr. BT and Prime are going to have a bit more of a gap in comparison to those top 2, and I think we're going to really see now just how much of a gap we're going to have and how much more effective this undercut is, because I'm sure Timon and Slash are going to be making their way in this lap. No, they both stay out. Don't know why they're both staying out for as long as they are, but it could play dividends for them. Just don't see it.
I think what they're doing is that they've maybe resigned themselves to the fact that they won't be in that DRS train, and maybe they're just going for a tyre advantage later on in the race. That could be the strategy, and then going for the theoretically fastest strategy as opposed to the one that's going to get you the highest position out on track. We'll see if it's going to pay off for those guys out there at the moment. But yeah, as those soft tyres degrade, that kind of advantage that they have on track is going to dissipate, and of course the likes of Mr. BT and Emily Prime, who are still keeping up a very strong pace out there on the circuit now on those mediums. They'll be up to temperature. Mr. BT is really flying, tried to drop Emily Prime from that DRS. Big middle and last sector needed for the Williams man to be able to stay in contention with the net race leader. But yeah, Timon and Slash, they're just staying out, and I think they're banking on that better strategy later on, so we'll see if that's going to unfold. Those guys sitting 1 and 2 at the moment. Gap is fairly stable to the guys behind Coxey, Funky Chicken. Those guys will wait a little bit longer before they come in, probably closer to lap 20, where we'll see the pit stops from those guys. Let's keep an eye out then on the front 2. Another lap down, and another lap where Timon stays out. Slash dives to the pit lane, so he is going to go in still a couple laps after the rest, and this is going to be our first real reference, Jack, as to where these guys stand. This Slash, of course, will have the better tyres, but you'd have to think as Timon picks up a penalty from the lead, so that really changes things. But Slash, you have to imagine he's going to be at least a couple of seconds shy of that Mr. BT and Emily Prime fight up front then. Mr. BT comes over the line, yet that gap is going to be several seconds either from Mr. Emily Prime. He does have better tyres, but that's a good gap that he's got to make up over drivers that are just as quick, if not quicker.
Yeah, 3 seconds gap, that's No, they've definitely left that too late of both Slash and Timon, especially with Timon now picking up the 3-second time penalty as well. That's now basically going to put him out of contention for this race win, as well as Prime. Both of those guys pretty much out of the race win contention. At this moment, Mr. BT is the one that is looking on course to take this win by about 4 seconds in the lead of the race. Of course, you've still got to factor in the medium runners that haven't made their pit stops as of yet. Gary completely dropping out of that DRS zone from that train as well, led by Ariel Coxey, and you can start to see Funky Chicken and Nathan are starting to struggle to keeping up with Coxey. So I think Coxey's now starting to push this one a lot more and trying to get a bit more of a gap into the guys that are on a set of the medium tyres now. Let's have a look. Is Timon coming into the pits? Yes, he certainly is. So Timon now into the pits to do his medium stint as well, and we'll keep an eye and see where he's going to be in relation to Slash, because of course Slash, when he came out of the pits, he was about 3 seconds behind Prime and Mr. BT, who's still remaining about 3 seconds behind them, and you can see they're just making their way around the final corner now, and Timon, I think, has only just gotten into his box. In fact, yeah, he's just coming out of his box now, and there goes Mr. BT, and there goes Emily Prime. But where is Slash in relation to him? Because Slash came in a lap earlier. Interestingly enough, I think they're both side by side. Oh, that was a Cobra moment for Timon. I thought he was going to get. I thought he was going to go. Well, I thought he was going to start seeing a spinning Alfa Romeo, but very nice and clean between the pair of them. Wow, that was very, very close between them, Dan.
Yeah, that was great driving from both of them to avoid an incident then. You never want to have that situation where you're coming out of the pit side by side with another car. I think, yeah, both of them would have had a bit of a Code Brown moment there, as you said. But I think they both did a very good job of avoiding that. But of course, the overcut hasn't done either of them any favours. The advantage that they do have a bit more battery to use, and they have better tyres. And in Slash's case, no penalty to try and stick with Prime, who has that 5 seconds to his name that he picked up in the pit, so still looking okay for it, especially for Slash. Timon behind, though, I imagine was going to be looking to try and get that move done. These guys, though, they're going to have to work with each other if they want any chance of the race win. They're going to have to swap down the straights with DRS and no fighting through the corners. They could still possibly get up to those front two, but they need to work with each other. Watch Timon here. He's up behind him. Slash actually moves to the inside. Is he defending this, or is he just moving over? Nevertheless, Timon will cruise past on the straight, and Slash will let him go. That's what these guys need to do. They need to pass on the straight, work with each other. That's the only way they're going to get through, by using that DRS to slingshot. Otherwise, if they start fighting amongst themselves, then realistically, even with the tyre advantage they have, if they start fighting, there's no chance at all of getting to the front. But you can already see that gap to from early Prime is coming down a bit to 2.3 seconds. Prime is struggling at this stage, but you're now seeing Timon and Slash, if they work together, it's not completely out of the question they can make that up. A lot of work to be done, but those guys, if they play their cards right, it's not out of the question.
No, it certainly isn't. And of course, one thing that we also need to keep our eye out on is look how much Mr. BT is gaining on these medium runners that haven't pit yet. Well, Gary, should I say, because he's about 2.5 seconds now behind the rest of the medium runners. He's now only 6.5 seconds, and that gap is coming down significantly in comparison to the Irishman up in front of him. So Emily Creco picking up a 3-second time penalty down in 12th position, where it's now going to, of course, defeat his buffer from Larkin. Interesting enough, Creco as well getting a jump on Larkin. I didn't particularly realise that when they made their pit stops, but yeah, Creco now up ahead of Larkin into 12th, and the final points position. Of course, as I said, the rest of the medium runners still haven't made their pit stops as of yet, and I think Coxey starting to struggle a bit more keeping the rest of these medium runners at bay. I think Funky Chicken just can't seem to find a move though on Ariel Coxey, and you can see Coxey has not got much battery left to play with in his arsenal, so he might be a bit under threat coming onto this onto the start finish straight on the next lap. But like you said, I think we're going to see it around lap number 20, lap number 21 are where we're going to see those soft runners medium runners make their way into the pits for the set of softs. The question is where they're going to come out and how far are they going to come out from the lead, because at the moment, to me, it's looking like Mr. BT is just going to be unstoppable, and I think Mr. BT's pretty much got this one in the bag, unless there's a safety car.
Well, let's just see, because Timon's pace looks really, really encouraging. He does have a penalty, but he is dragging Slash with him. That gap to Prime has lost a bit of time to Mr. BT, not much. The tyre advantage is going to be quite strong right now, but you are seeing now Timon cut that gap down a good amount, you have to say, more than half a second on the last lap. So Timon looking very strong at this stage, and he's dragging Slash along. So don't rule that out just yet. We'll keep half an eye on that. Mr. BT is firmly in control of this race, but not out of the woods just yet. So we'll see how that is going to unfold. Medium runners still going along, and although you do see Mr. BT massively catching Gary, as you said, Gary's really struggling in this race. The race pace just doesn't seem to be there. 3 seconds adrift now from the rest of the medium trainer, being caught rapidly. Be a few more laps, you'd imagine, before these guys do come in. It'll be interesting to see where they come out in relation to that fight that starts from Scream now with his teammate behind him. That seems to be the chief midfield battle, and I think where you're going to see later on in the race a lot of those medium starters coming up towards them. I think that's going to be something to really look out for behind that leading fight. So keep an eye out on that. Of course, we'll wait a little bit longer. It's actually Coxey's gone round. Coxey has been disqualified from the session. What on earth is going on there? He's dropped the car, heading through, just heading into turn, heading out of turn 8, I think. And I think he went across the grass, and because that registered as going backwards, he's been disqualified from the race. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, he certainly has, and even coming through turn number 8, I think Larkin didn't think the car was ghosting, so he slowed down to try and sort of make sure he didn't hit Coxey. Tingham goes straight into the back of him, and now he's got a broken front wing. June now up into 13th position, just behind Larkin. Very unfortunate for Tingham, but yeah, very unfortunate for Coxey as well. It's so easy to be, as weird as it sounds, it's so easy to be disqualified around here. Just from having that one spin, for some reason the game just seems to think you're going backwards, when realistically you're not. So unfortunately Coxey's become a victim of that. There's not much more that he can do, which now means that Funky Chicken is our leading medium runner that hasn't made a pit stop, and now our race leader. Nathan all over the back of him, and Carmentis in third and Sully in fourth. Yeah, very unfortunate for Coxey, because he was running so well in this race, and I had the feeling that he could have gotten himself a top 5 had all of that had happened. Tin Can's made his way into the pits. For some reason, chucked on a set of hards as Sully has gone around, I believe, at turn number 8. Didn't do the, well, luckily, didn't do the same thing as what happened with Coxey. Managed to actually brake and just keep it on the track, but a massive wobble from the Irishman, and now down into 5th position. And well, we saw Gary was so far behind. Look how close Mr. BT is now up to the back of Sully after having that spin. Sully's tyres are also going to be quite hot as well from having that half spin, so I think Sully massively under pressure now. In all fairness, he could pit for a set of the softs, but they're going to be completely dead by the end of this race.
Maybe the rest is going to have to take, because he'll have cooked those medium tyres. He does stay out another lap though, and for Mr. BT, he'll be looking to get through, but he doesn't have that battery to use. He gets the DRS boost here, which helps him along, because Timon is lapping just a little bit quicker with Slash a little bit further back, but now Sully will hold him up, as it's very difficult to overtake through the middle of this lap. Of course, very easy to overtake in a turn 1 if you're close enough. Mr. BT nowhere near close enough on this occasion. He's burning that battery now, but towards the hairpin again, he's just not quite got the distance, he's not quite got the approach to lunge onto those brakes. Now this does open things up for the rest. Mr. BT has to be clinical here, but you'd imagine, as he's not really able to get onto the back of it, maybe he's using this as an opportunity to save battery, but he is being held up at the moment. It's not catastrophic for him, but certainly this is not what he wanted. Sully's not getting out of the way, and it's an opportunity for those chasing guys to actually pull back some time, and Slash, without a penalty, continues to get closer. Sully holding up Mr. BT. Mr. BT, I think, is going to wait until the DRS. He won't have lost too much time behind Sully, but that's certainly a time loss he will not have been after one bit.
No, 100%, and you can even see, in fact, Sully has just kind of moved out of the way of Mr. BT. Interestingly enough, Sully's going to be the one that gets the DRS on Mr. BT, and we might see the Irishman come back at Mr. BT. You can see DRS is now going to be open for the Irishman. Are we going to see him potentially take this back from Mr. BT in towards turn number 1? You can see how much he's closing up.
He's
no,
backing
he actually backs off. So I thought we were going to see that battle go on between the pair of them. I thought Sully just sort of let him through and just allowed him to get the DRS so he could get the jump back on Mr. BT. But Yeah, no, he doesn't go for it in the end. And as I said, a few of the medium guys have actually made their way into the pits. Funky Chicken and Gary making their way into the pits. Funky Chicken already back out of the pits and 5.2 seconds up ahead of Gary. Now up ahead of Rudy as well. Rudy's still yet to make that pit stop, and he was in that battle with the rest of the medium runners. In fact, he did make a pit stop very early on, but I don't think he's going to be able to hit those mediums to the end of the race. But Funky Chicken now out of the pits, down in 12th, so we kind of get where the rest of those medium runners are going to come out. It's going to be literally, Rudy's going to be right in the middle of the rest of those medium runners. How they're going to get on though, if Funky Chicken being the front medium runner that's now coming for the set of softs, I wonder how this is going to play out, Dan.
Let's see. Indeed, that train will have broken up a bit because of the mistakes from Sully and from Coxey. Nathan JP and Carmentless still with it. Those guys both dive to the pit lane. Carmentless very late on the brakes. Is he gonna? He's overtaken him on the way in. Oh my word! He's avoided a penalty, I think. Carmentless. That is remarkable. He braked so late. Nathan was cautious. Carmentless, unless he's got a penalty that I couldn't see, he's just jumped the McLaren driver and the. Oh no, he does get him in front in the end from the pits. That's remarkable. Carmentalist, opportunistic as you like, gets past Nathan JB under braking for the pit entry. That's an insane overtake.
I wish I would have seen that. Unfortunately didn't get on board of it quick enough. I only just saw him sort of veer off in front of Nathan at the very entrance of the pit lane. But yeah, that's very unfortunate. Well, very unfortunate for Nathan. Very good move for Carmentalist. Now up into 10th behind Funky Chicken. 1.9 seconds though is that gap. That's how much of a buffer those soft tyres are. Well, they're significantly better than the medium tyres. 12 more laps left to go of this race, and at the moment, Mr. BT still 2.1 seconds up ahead. He's now getting further away from MLE Prime, and Timon and Slash are both closing up significantly to MLE Prime. Luckily for them, they can just get the jump on Prime anyway because of his 5-second penalty, but Timon has that 3-second penalty, so really Slash is the one in a net second position. And Mr. BT, I don't want to call it early, but I think he's pretty much already won this race unless he makes a mistake. I think this is Mr. BT's to lose.
He looks very much in control at this stage. I think Slash is going to make a move on Timon here. Down the straight, pulls to the inside, and Timon knows better than to fight it. Through goes Slash. He's P3, and if he has a good lap, he can stay in that DRS of Prime. Start to use him as a bit of a slingshot, but Prime's pace is still fairly good, so he can still try and hold on at the moment. Jim has made a move on Lark at the T1. It holds the place as well in front of the Alfa Romeo, and we're now going to start to see maybe a charge from the soft train behind. Of course, a lot of these guys, well, all these guys without penalties, and that train in front is fairly penalty shod. So Creeko, Jim, Larkin under particular pressure here. AJ Wuhan picks up another penalty in what has been a nightmare race for both the Ferrari guys at this point. A lot of mistakes I think we've seen throughout this race that's really broken things up. Up at the front though, one man that has not made mistakes at the moment at least, CPI, Mr. BT, controlling things up at the front. Slash though looks like he is going to get that DRS off of Prime, so he continues his very strong performance here as Emily, his TDG Slash. We haven't really seen the best of him for so long, and I know there's been a lot of results that have got away from him in recent times, but Slash, you have to say at the moment, looking really strong. And if he can just keep this going, looks like it could be a return at long last to the podium for the Williams man.
Yeah, no, it certainly could be. Not only that though, we're at France last week, got very unfortunate where he got caught up with Funky Chicken, and now he was running in second position at that point as well. So Slash, I think, is a little bit on form at the moment, and I think we're just going to be starting to see him start making his way up in that championship very soon. A little bit further on behind, the two AlphaTauri teammates of Scream and Creeko, both very close with each other. And might even see Creeko go for a move on his teammate in towards turn number 5, although he's a bit too far behind. Plus, Scream has not got a penalty, whereas of course Creeko does, so it doesn't really make sense for him to get any sort of, or for those two to switch anyway. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if we're going to start to see something through those two Williams though if they switch. Obviously Prime and Slash both teammates, so I wonder if we're going to see Slash go for a move on Prime, or just sort of Prime sort of lets Slash through without letting Timon through. Because at the moment, Prime's he's going to be losing out to both Slash and Timon, but there's about 2.5 seconds now behind Mr. BT with about 10 laps left to go. I think it's a tall order for Slash to do it, but it's not impossible to see Slash catch up to the back of Mr. BT, because at the moment, I think he's looking the quickest out of these top 4.
He is looking very, very quick, but I don't think he's going to be close enough to the back of Prime unless Prime lets him through, of course. Slash actually downshift to 7th gear, so there's your answer to that. He does not go for the move just yet, but they're all stacking up behind Prime. Other dynamic in the race is the charge of the soft train. Gary is up behind. These are actually 1 and 2 in the championship right now. Gary, 1 and 3 in the championship, my mistake. Gary does move through on the inside, goes P12, Rudy down to P13. He's trying to get these mediums to the end, but really, and he has actually just punctured. Rudy's got a puncture heading through turn 3, so the tyre gives up after just 21 laps, and that's the sort of distance that a lot of those front runners are going to be doing on the tyres. So that's something to look out for, but Rudy pulls over. I would have expected the tyres to last longer than that. Rudy, the championship leader, has had an absolute nightmare today all the way through. This not only could open things up, but also, one thing we have to note, 21 laps on those tyres, and as I said earlier, that's the sort of laps that these front runners are going to be doing on them by the end.
Yeah, no, they certainly will be. I mean, Mr. BT, when he finishes, yeah, literally be about 21 laps, like you said. So, well, this might have just spiced up the race, knowing that obviously what has happened with Rudy. I think the medium runners might actually struggle to get to the end of the race. Prime especially, because he's the highest medium runner. Slash and Prime both change positions. So Prime now down into 3rd, following now his TTG teammate of Slash. But I think Prime is going to be under threat from Time, and I think Time is not going to try and waste any time, no pun intended, and go for this move on Prime in towards turn number 5. Let's have a look though. They're both sort of working out to look for a move, and Time and brakes very late in comparison to Prime, so he's going to get a bit of a better run out of the turn 5 corner, but where he went a bit too wide, just not going to be close enough to get any sort of move done, so Dutchman's just going to have to wait there for the minute. And look at this as well, Slash, he's already gained about 7/10 of a second in this
isn't over
on Mr. BT. I think we're going to see, I think this might be coming down to the last 2 laps battle going on between the Williams of TTG Slash and CPI Mr. BT.
Let's see how this unfolds. Mr. BT has not been pressured in this race. I think he's made a bit of an error on this lap, but he's going to have to regain that composure. Slash, you imagine, can sniff an opportunity. Jim has made a mistake. Larkin goes through, and up to P7. Jim with another time penalty to his name, now 6 seconds on the board. But now we're going to start to see the soft runners come through. Funky Chicken, Carmentelas, Nathan JB. These guys have gone up towards it, and I imagine Funky Chicken is going to want to try and get on with things further up the field there. So a few battles to keep our eye on. Let's see how they are going to unfold. I think he will be too far back from Jim though at this stage, but of course with the extra grip you can make opportunities through the rest of the lap. But of course this is where things are going to get a bit more tricky for someone like Funky Chicken, as we've got Boompier, who's I think is he disconnected, or has he just retired on track? Because I saw him leave the session. He's went off, and his AI car is now driving around. So I think he span off and just in maybe a bit of a fit of rage has elected to retire from the race. That's not what you want to see. But yeah, just keeping an eye on though on some of these other battles. Rudy with a time penalty again. He has pet for softs, of course. Nightmare race for him. Just keeping an eye on this lead battle though, because the gap's down by another few tenths of a second. 1.4 seconds, 1.5 seconds, and it's getting to that point where you can start thinking about DRS. And when you get that DRS, it's so powerful around Portimao. It's maybe one of the most powerful DRS zones on the calendar. If Slash can get himself in, the pressure will really mount on Mr. BT, and his tyres are older. We saw the puncture for Rudy. Mr. BT's controlled this race all the way through, but maybe, just maybe, this race isn't over just yet.
No, it certainly isn't. 1.2 seconds now separating Slash and Mr. BT. Slash looking so much more confident around this track in comparison to Mr. BT now. I think the tables have now turned in favour of Slash, and it's just looking like he's just looking a lot more confident in comparison to Mr. BT up in front. I think it's just a case of, in fact, that makes that a bit more interesting. Look at Mr. BT's telemetry. He's got the yellow light on. So I think Mr. BT underfueled the car. He's now trying to save that fuel, which I think is why he's starting to, or the gap is starting to close up between Slash and Mr. BT as a Prime. A 3-second time penalty on top of his 5 seconds now. He could be under threat from Emily Scream down in 5th position. But anyway, yeah, so I think that's why Mr. BT, and you can see that's solid yellow light.
Look how early he's shifting.
Yeah, it's not the case that he's only just under fuel. I think he's significantly under fuel, and I think he could be at threat of this race win.
Well, let's see how this unfolds then, because you can see there, he actually does rev it out there as he comes onto the straight in 5th gear, then shifts early in 6th gear, so it's a little bit inconsistent. But certainly, Slash will look to try and take advantage. Of course, Mr. BT, oh, I can't imagine the tension. But look at that, you can see the lack of straight line speed. There's a bit of a burning of the energy from Slash, and he is pretty much in. But Prime, Time, they're still in this, of course, with penalties to their name, so it's not quite as impressive for them. Funky Chicken moves through on Larkin, Commensalist through on Jube, so here comes the charge of the soft runners in that midfield. And of course, Funky Chicken is eyeing up potentially a top 5 finish here if he can get up to Scream. Kriko is going to try and protect his teammate as much as he can, but we've already seen Funky Chicken move past the car that's in a DRS train, so you know he is capable of that. 5.5 laps to go, and now this leading quartet is condensed. Mr. BT's, oh, it's Prime is off. Prime out of turn 8, recovers the car just about. He will get back on the track, but what this does now is it puts the rest of these guys in range. Scream is 6.5 behind. Prime has 8 seconds of penalties. A man that looked destined for at least potentially fighting for the podium. With Funky Chicken's charge, Prime now may not get a top 5 in this race, despite running at the front the whole time. That'd be a heartbreak for the Williams man.
It might not even be a top 6 either, because Funky Chicken all over the back of Kriko, of course, he's going to make up a bit more time in comparison to make up more time from Scream as well. Yeah, Car Mentalist is also up there, as here we go for the race lead. Slash down the inside of Mr. BT to take now the race lead, and Mr. BT, I think he's got to forget about trying to take this race win. He's got to try and just figure out of how he's going to get on this podium, because I think his fuel, I don't think he's going to get enough to get to the end of the race. He needs to keep on upshifting as early as possible. He's probably going to lose out a place to Time, and probably not this lap, on the next lap. But I think Mr. BT's under threat from running out of fuel, not losing only just the lead and in second, but he might even lose out to the rest of the guys down from 5th and downwards, because, I mean, running out of fuel, especially through the fastest part of the circuit, which is literally the final part of the circuit, I think Mr. BT's under threat here. I think he's up threat from even finishing in top 5.
Let's have a look, because, of course, we don't know how bad the fuel situation is exactly. We just know that he is negative, meaning he is not on course to make it to the end of the race. And of course, generally on this game, you overfuel the car and the fuel generally burns off over the course of the race, so saving it while you're already under is a near impossibility. It seems almost a guarantee that he will run out before the end of the race. It's just a question of at what point on the circuit. It could be on the run to the line. In that case, he may well sustain that. He has no penalties, which is a help for him, but it could be way down at like turn 13, 14, and that's when you start to see the issues really start to quick up. Timon is now on the back of him. He's going to try all he can to stay in that DRS. And the slipstream allows him to drive a bit more efficiently, but Slash is really putting the pace on now and pulling clear 0.7 of a second, so he needs to keep the pace up if he wants to stay in it. But it's that balancing act. Oh, I feel for him so much, because having led most of the race, and we touted him as a fairly convincing race winner at this point, I mean, trying to keep up with the race leading pace while managing fuel, it's a balance that's almost impossible to strike. I do not envy the man right now.
Neither do I, and like you said, I think Mr. BT he's definitely under threat. Again, in fact, there's an interesting one as well. He's not the only one. Scream as well in 5th position has also got that yellow light, so he could be under threat, and especially with everyone behind him, literally directly behind him, I think Funky Chicken might be on for potentially, depending on when Mr. BT's fuel runs out, Funky Chicken might be on for a podium, you know.
It's an outside bet. Timon is up there still. Prime with all those penalties. My word, it is not out the question. Let's see. Of course, it all depends on Mr. BT's fuel. He is coming back towards Slash. Let's see if he can try and pull that situation back, because he is still keeping up with the race leader at the moment. Then Funky Chicken is looking ambitiously to the inside of Kriko. He's going to go for an inside there, and they almost touch. They do touch. Somehow neither go around, and Kriko holds on to the place in a heart and mouth moment for Funky Chicken, no doubt about that. Carmental is behind his line, and Larkin big oversteer through turn 4, holds on to the car just about, and is still looking at the attack, but he will not go go for it on the brakes. He bides his time at the moment in P9 on the circuit. Penalties look to favour him at this stage in the race. Timon still all over Mr. BT, begging, I'm sure, that the Alpine runs out of fuel. We don't know at what point he may well run out of fuel, but that yellow light is still on. Scream's yellow light is still on. Of course, like I said earlier, you overfuel the car, so you have to say, Jack, that as soon as you go under on this track, it's a near impossibility to pull it back. So Mr. BT and Scream, it's almost an inevitability they will run out of fuel. The question is, at what point on the track, and how much will that affect the race?
Well, I was also talking about Funky Chicken potentially getting on the podium. He's now out of that 8-second gap between himself and Prime. He needs to get past both of these AlphaTauris ASAP. The thing is, Creco's obviously not going to let him pass. So I think he's completely under threat from not being able to finish on the podium, as Carl Mentelis and Larkin both change positions. Though Larkin trying to hold it around the outside, but it's got 0 ERS to play with. So he touches the inside curve.
Larkin's
Larkin goes around, as I said, touching that inside curve. And he picks himself up a 3-second time penalty in the process of that, which is a little bit unfair considering he spun around. But you've also now got Gary and Sully all over the back of him on those soft tyres. Funky Chicken and Creco now in towards turn number 5, both side by side. I think Funky Chicken's going to get a bit better traction coming out of it, although saying that Creco looks like he has. However, I think Funky Chicken is going to have it around the outside, both low on ERS. Creco's going to hold it down the inside. Funky Chicken can't get the move done. All of this time is completely costing him from Emily Prime in 4th position, and I think Funky Chicken is now under threat, as I said, of not finishing up in that top 5 from jumping up ahead of Prime. He'll jump up ahead of Creco at least, but I don't think he's going to jump up ahead of Prime at this point.
Wow, so much to unpack here as we head into the final lap of the race. Scream and Prime, that's something to really look out for. Then Scream, Creco has done a superb job of keeping his teammates safe, and it's going to be a last lap fight. Prime has pulled out that gap, but he's out of battery, so Scream can try and pull that back. We cannot look away though from the front of the field. Mr. BT runs right through T1, no penalty, thankfully for him. And now the red light is flashing, so let's see where this is going to happen. You'd imagine the fuel is going to run out at some point. The question is where. There's still a lot going on. Carmentelis diving, Funky Chicken to turn 3, doesn't hit Creco, now he's going for the move. Carmentelis inside, outside through turn 4. Can he get the move completed on the final lap? Yes, he can. Carmentelis late in the day. P7, another brilliant move. What an overtaking display from Carmentelis here tonight. We look up towards the leading fight. I'm on board with Mr. VT. It's just a matter of time now, surely. The yellows are coming out. It's happening now, and it's so early in the lap. So back goes Mr. VT, through goes Timon. Then what's going to happen with Scream? Of course, he's also low on fuel as well. So Mr. VT, can he last it to the line? Prime may get past, he may still hold on to a podium, but he's going to lose all that time on the straight. No doubt about who's going to win this race. TTD Slash, what a wait it's going to be. Scream is gone as well. Slash to the line at long last. A race winner again in LOA Division 2. Timon second over the line. Now Prime with those penalties. Mr. BT is trying just to get to the line. Carmentelis could be in this then. Scream is gone, of course. Mr. BT crosses third. Prime behind him. Prime holds on in front of Carmentelis. Mr. BT just about on the podium. That'll be something of a consolation. It's Carmentelis the top 5. Funky Chicken, Nathan JB 7th. Creco, Scream, the AlphaTauris heartbreakingly slip from the front of that midfield fight. Gary somehow in the top 10 from Sully and June. Then Larkin 13th. A lot of nightmare races further down the field. AJ Wuhan will come through in front of Rudy, or Willie. Rudy trying to get him on the line. I think actually AJ Wuhan, he hasn't run out of fuel. He's just very slow in the run to the line. Rudy puts it in the wall, showing his frustrations for the race. Tin Can jumps in front of AJ Wuhan. Forza Brendan was off on the first lap, never quite able to recover. Well, after a race that maybe didn't have the most action, but certainly high on drama, fuel drama at the end of the race. Like I said though, no doubt about the winner in the end. TTG Slash, it's been a while, but in the end, you have to say, he was up there the whole time. He looked like he stayed out longer, and it looked like it may have cost him, but he recovered, and in the end, a deserving race winner. And, well, after so many race wins have got away from him over the last 3 seasons, you have to say, on this occasion, he finally got it right.
Yeah, eventually. It's taken him, I don't know how many odd seasons, like you said, Dan, but yeah, he's definitely managed to get it right this time around. Congratulations to Slash for taking the win for tonight. Timon It was a valiant effort from himself. If he didn't have that 3-second time penalty, I think that might have been a bit more of a bigger battle between those two. But making that late pit stop, obviously we were judging it at first, but it actually played it perfectly for them. Of course, Mr. BT having that, or running out of fuel helped them as well, but at the same time, those two pitting that later strategy, much better tyres towards the end, and it just played it to perfection for them. But those are our top 3 finishes of Slash, Timon, and BT. Very good effort between them. Prime as well, very good race with all 4 of those guys, but unfortunately it just didn't play into dividends for Prime either. Car Mentalist from 18th on the grid moves up into 5th position. What a race that was from him for sure. Same with Funky Chicken, both outside the top 10. Nathan JB as well from 15th to 7th. Creeko in 8th, Scream in 9th, Gary in 10th, Sully in 11th. Doom rounding out the final points positions, and then you've got outside of the points of Larkin, our championship leader of Rudy, Tin Cam, Forza Brendan, AJ Wuhan, Boompier, and then of course the one that ended up getting disqualified because of the game, Mr. Ariel Coxey at the very back of the grid. And that, as I said, it wasn't the most intense field race, but the strategy wise just played that completely different, and especially with the fuel as well. Just very unfortunate for Mr. BT and for Scream, because if they didn't run out of fuel, then they would have played that to perfection. BT probably would have finished 2nd, and Scream probably would have finished 5th, or 4th even, because I think he started catching Prime at the end after that spin, and he sort of got away. At final lap, it just looked like Scream was sort of pushing that a bit more to try and catch up to him, but just didn't pay out in the end for him. But yeah, the fuel was what really sort of cost him for those 2 drivers. But Slash, as I said, I'll keep saying it, we kept on thinking it was just not going to pay out for him. And it did. Fair play to him. Like you said, they had to work together, and they worked together and they did it in the end.
Yeah, fantastic stuff from those guys. Of course, I'm just going to get our podium guys in for an interview. Probably quite a lot of stories to tell, so it's going to be really good to hear from those lot. Hopefully, they are all going to get themselves joined in, and yeah, we can get hearing from them. But yeah, another very entertaining race for very different reasons, I think, than what we saw from the first. So we have had 3 very different races so far this season. I just need to try and get Mr. BT added, and we can finally get going. Or do you want to I guess we can work our way up the podium this time around. So I guess we'll go back to you, Jack. Actually, yeah, we'll work down the podium. So I guess we'll hand it back over to you, Jack. I don't really know what I'm saying, but we'll hear first from our race winner tonight, Mr. TTG Slash. I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, Slash, that looked like that was a bit of an intense field race for sure. You ended up down, I think down in 3rd at one point, and then sort of you and Timon playing the catch-up game to Mr. BT and Prime. How was that race for you? I mean, finally, you got yourself onto the top step of that podium.
Last week was absolute pain. I started in the front row, and then I had a terrible start. Lost, I think I was at P4 at one point. And then I knew Thyman was much quicker than me, and the other 2 pitted much earlier. So the plan was just to stay behind Thyman and hope he's tries to takes the tires much longer, which he did. So I tried to do a little undercut on him, because I felt like he was out of all of them, I think he was the quickest one out of the 4 of us. And then once he overtook me again after he pitted, just stayed behind him the whole time and then waited for him to catch up to one of my Williams teammate. I don't know who he was. I think it was Prime.
Yep.
And then afterwards, just catch up to Mr. BT and then overtook him. And then the plan was to initially go all out in the second last lap, because the DOS is so powerful. But in the final lap, he got, I think he lost his fuel, so it made it a little bit more easier, and unlucky for him.
Yeah, no, that's certain as well. We're very unfortunate for him indeed. But yeah, I mean, with your, obviously at the start of that race, it looked like it was sort of quite an intense one between you and Timon once again as well. Was it always that plan to just pit a lot later than what the other guys were? Was it trying to go for, because I think you pit on lap 11 or 12. Was it always that plan to try and go around that stage? Were there times where you thought you might try and go a little bit earlier, or Were you just thought I need to just sort of stick with my race and just do what I can do, or was you just gonna try and follow everybody else?
Pretty much that. Like, I knew from lap 11 and downwards, if I played like around there, I knew I was gonna get a puncher. So the plan was to just get to lap 12, like the whole time. But when I was practicing, just get to lap 12. If you're slow, just try minimize the damage, and then yeah. Because I ended in the race like 80%, like 81. If it was another lap, I would have gone puncher with it.
Yeah. No, I get that as well. So, yeah, I mean, next week we've, of course, around Austria for round number 4. You'll now go up to, I believe, well, that was actually your first set of points for the season, which is a win. So, you're now up, I believe, into, I think, P4 in the standings. Are you hoping to try and make it 2 for 2, or I should say 2 for 4 next week?
I have to wait and see because at the moment I think Rudy didn't got any points, so the gap is 5 to him. So if I can get like a similar result with him not scoring points, that'll be absolutely perfect. Because my goal is to like to challenge the championship by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because last season was absolutely like poor for my standards.
Yeah. No, of course. And Dan, have you got any questions for our race winner tonight?
Yeah, this is your first race win since the opener back in season 5. It has been quite a long journey. A lot of opportunities have got away for various reasons. A lot of them not your fault. I guess just reflecting on that time period, what were the emotions like racing here? Of course, you clearly hold yourself to high standards, and what was it like having that wait for a race win that's finally come tonight?
So happy, like. I don't know if I had it recorded in my microphone, like with me on, but I was like celebrating so much when I crossed the line. So it just felt so amazing.
Yeah, certainly. We'll see if you're back here again throughout the rest of it. Yeah, look on form this season. We'll see how things unfold. So yeah, thank you very much, race winner TDG Slash. I guess we will now hand things back over. I'll go back to you, Jack, then, as we're going to keep the interviews rolling on from our second place finisher, Mr. Kjarti Diamond.
Yeah, so Timon once again back on the podium for Portimao again. I know this is a very strong track for yourself. How was that race for you? Because it looked quite intense at first, and I thought at one point that you were going to struggle getting on the podium. But you made it to second on the podium. How did that end up for you?
Oh, for a second I forgot I got second. Nah, I mean, this track, it's fairly interesting on strategy-wise. I'm fairly quick here. With the no ABS, it's a struggle, but this is one of my better tracks on it. I had a lot of lockups, had to compensate my setup to it, so Taiwa was a bit high. But I think the strategy, I made it work well. I know everyone was going to undercut and bet very early, and just like I did last season, I went long. And I pretty much had the same scenario, although this time I picked up a time penalty, which was it was a struggle. I had 2 lockups, turn 1, and then I picked up 2 warnings out of that. So it was a bit annoying, but it's a learning curve, and I'm happy either way with the result. And Slash was very quick. I was pushing a lot. Like the whole race, I was pretty much on my limit, made a lot of mistakes, but I think Slash definitely deserved to win this race, and maybe Mr. BT as well.
And I was actually just about to ask in regards to the same thing that I asked sort of Slash with when you both obviously came out of the pits, because you both made those late calls to come in and come out of the pits. Was it your intention that you and Slash wanted to just try and work together and try and sort of bridge that gap between yourself and Prime to try and go for this race win? Obviously, I know you picked up the penalty on your in lap as well, but was that always your intention, just to try and work together, just to catch up to the rest of them, or was you just sort of trying to race your own race and try and at least get on the third step of the podium?
I mean, my strategy-wise, over gutting everyone was my own goal, of course, but when the situation became what it was with my penalty, only thing I could do is hope that Slash would get a penalty, because I heard Mr. BT was from lap 20 onwards or something already in negative fuel. So from that point onwards, I knew we were able to get past him. And especially since he kept burning his ERS, I knew he barely had any ERS, so I was just waiting for him to move out of the way in the end. But no, I was genuinely hoping for Slash to pick up a penalty, so he gave me one kind of a chance, but I didn't even get a shot to attack him. So I drove my own race in the beginning, and afterwards I worked together. And I mean, it's points. It's a long season. I tend to bottle a lot, so I won't. I won't finish a lot of races, so every race I can get some points, I'll happily take it and try not bottle it.
No, of course. And as I said, like with Slash as well, it's Austria next week. I know a lot of people tend to say that this is quite a pad-heavy track. No idea why, but it's quite it's sort of like I'd probably say one of the easier tracks on the calendar. Are you hoping to maybe try and come out on top for Austria, or is that maybe a track that's not sort of strong for yourself?
Well, I'm always hoping to come out on top. It doesn't always work, and I don't really often have to pace for it. But no, Austria, the track isn't really in my favour, although I do have it 3 times that week, and I might have COVID, so I don't have anything else to do to practice, so I might do well, but if I don't have COVID, I'll go to school and shit, don't do well.
Fair enough. And Dan, have you got any questions for our second place finisher for tonight?
Yeah, you did mention your lack of optimism for finishing races. Obviously, you've made your assist switch this season, and it seems you seem to be gaining the confidence again. So, how do you assess your chances going forward after getting finally a good amount of points on the board?
None. I just see it race by race, and I just have fun. Like I don't have any intentions of winning a championship. Like if I can get a constructors, it will be nice. Drivers, there are definitely a lot of quicker drivers out there. I mean, Rudy will be promoted up to D1, I've heard. And if he isn't, it's a scam because he clearly drove and spun on purpose or got damaged that one. And then he drove for 21 laps on the mediums to get a puncture. Like it's fairly obviously he's sandbagging. So he'll be promoted, but there's still a lot of other quicker drivers. So no, I don't expect any championship chances, any good results. I'll be happy with, but I see it race by race, and I just enjoy driving.
Yeah, we'll see if we can confirm those accusations thrown towards Rudy. We'll see how things are going to unfold. Maybe he's just trying to do enough so that he just scrapes a D2 championship. Who knows? But anyway, I guess I'll hand it back over to you, Jack. Once again, I think there's a lot to digest from our third place finisher, Mr. CPI, Mr. BT. Back to you, Jack.
Yeah, certainly is. So, Mr. BT, that looked like that was your race to lose at the beginning, and then you did. Unfortunately, that first stint though, you just look so confident. Was there any? Well, I will ask. Did you end up underfueling that on purpose, or was it the case that you only put about 0.8 or 0.7? I don't know how much it is that you would have put in to run out of fuel, but it just looked so confident in that first stint. How was that race panning out for you until obviously that fuel ran out?
Well, brilliantly. To be honest, I actually think I put 1.5 in.
Oh.
It's a mix of like Tybin said I was burning my ARS. I actually didn't really use it after the first few laps because like I saw that I was already on that sort of like D rating bubble, and my initial intention was to get him out the DRS, which I just about managed, and then I kind of like tried to hold off. So I felt really strong throughout the race, to be honest. But maybe it was about when I crossed the line on, I think, lap 26, 27, I saw the yellow fuel indicator pop up and my heart just sunk because I realised that if I was already on negative fuel at that point, I was never going to make it to the end. And so you would have seen a gap going down. It wasn't really me losing pace. I felt like I still had some pace in the tyres. But I was short shifting on every straight, short shifting after every corner, trying to minimise fuel. I mean, I felt like if I didn't have the fuel problem, I could have got away just fine. Maybe lost a bit of time at the end because my tyres were struggling. But I really did feel like it was my race to lose until that point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well, and it just looks so close. Well, I say so close. It looks so close without the rest of the field, other than yourself, because like I said, you completely blitzed it in that first stint. Obviously, I know it looked like you still had that pace, especially in that final lap, because I think that was when you kind of just said screw it and just went all out for it. Unfortunately, it was just a bit because obviously of the lack of fuel, it didn't work out for yourself in the end. To be honest with you, there isn't much that I can ask because it was more of sort of a boring race until literally that final part where it just where obviously all of that unfolded. But I mean, is Portimao usually like a strong track for yourself, or is it normally like a weaker sort of track for you?
Oh, arguably my strongest, if not like second or third strongest on the game. And so I used ABS for this race, and I vowed that if I won it, I was never going to use it again. So
it's coming back.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Turned on ABS.
Hey, I told you already, man.
I think because of that, you might even with the fuel drop. I think you kind of just have to turn it off for the rest of it now. But yeah, that is.
I'm not even a full-time driver here, mate. When I get the opportunity to use it, you best believe I'm going to use it. If I get a seat for Austria, maybe not, because I don't even like it there.
Fair enough.
We'll see, I guess.
Fair enough. I mean, some say that you might have underfueled it on purpose so you could continue to use ABS, but I mean, we won't say anything on that. Obviously, I was going to ask as well about Austria.
I don't like it. Well, I'm a reserve, so it's like 50-50. Like I was a complete mug and decided to put myself down as a reserve on a form before realising that this was actually a good time for me. But for Austria, I like the track. If I get a seat, I'll try and put some practice in. Although the reason I reckon my pace was a bit faster today because I've been down with COVID, so I've been like timing. I've been off school, just like banging out the practice daily. Yeah. As soon as I found out I was going to get a seat for this race, but yeah, as for Austria, I hope I do get a seat, and if I do, I'll devote as much time as I can trying to get a decent pace. But it's not going to be like this week for sure.
No, of course. And obviously, fingers crossed for yourself that you do get a seat for next week. Dan, you got any questions for our third place finisher for tonight?
Well, we've had two races. At both of those races, we have to say you have been right in that front fight. Obviously, you're a reserve. The call-ups might not be all the time, but if you look throughout the rest of the calendar, do you think there is the chance that maybe you could find yourself on that top step? Of course, you say Portimao is a great track for you, but do you think there could be other opportunities coming up for you to get that race win?
Looking at the track now, the calendar now, there's about. I mean, I'm not like a one-track pony. I'm close to it. I don't really have that kind of pace on many other tracks, but like places like Bahrain, Britain, China, I enjoy those as well. So hopefully I can get a seat for those and actually put enough fuel in the car this time. But, I mean, it was an oversight, but looking back on it, the lack of race practice I did focus too much on quali. So like I didn't even think about fuel. I thought just stick like 1.5 in and I'll be fine, like always. But just lack of experience, I guess, cost me here.
Well, I guess we'll see if those wrongs can be righted later on. Thanks to all of you guys. Well done to all of you today. I think you guys, along with Prime, proved to be the class of the field in terms of pace. So well done to all of you. I guess I'll hand it back over to you, Jack, to get things rounded up. Everything just about said and done for the third round of the season at Portimao, I guess. With 3 rounds of 17 down, back to you, Jack. Let's get things wrapped up for the third round of the season.
Certainly will, and of course I'll in fact can quickly wrap it up by saying Rudy is still in the championship lead by 23 points ahead of Nathan JB in second. Car Mentalist is now moved up to third with 26, tied with Gary in fourth. Slash and Larkin are tied for fifth and sixth with 25. So it's so close. If Rudy isn't in this, it's so close just at the top of that. But I suppose that's just how it does go. So that's how we will leave it. Thanks to everyone for tuning in for tonight. Make sure you guys do check out the PC race every Friday at 8 PM by Luke Etheridge. And then, of course, every Saturday at 6:30 PM GMT for Division 1, 3 and 4. Division 1 covered by James Head and NSX Montana. Division 3 covered by Ariel Car Mentalist and Jess Games 95. And Division 4 covered by Ariel Nolan and XL Tinkan. And then, of course, at 8:10 PM GMT, Division 2 and Division 5 by myself and Daka for Division 2, and Division 5 by Killer Blue and QBR Packer. So make sure you guys are tuning in for next week around Austrian circuit for race number 4. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.